elected in 2021. She has served as our national secretary from 2017 to 2021. She has also served as our Eastern Regional Director. She joined the sorority in 1976 in the Epsilon Kappa chapter at the University of Memphis. While in college, she was elected the national second vice president. And we are proud to say that she is the first national second vice president who has been elected to serve as the national president. Elsie is a member of our DREF board, as well as our D4 Women of Action Board of Directors. She is also holds memberships as board of directors for Wings and for the Worthing Foundation. She's in a number of community organizations, but including but not limited to the Links Incorporated, the NAACP, and the NCNW. She's a member of St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Dallas, Texas, and has been listed in the world's who's who for executives. Elsie is a graduate of the University of Memphis with a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, Technology, and Computer Sciences Systems. She has received her MBA from Columbia University. She is married to Clarence Holmes Jr. and resides in Plano, Texas. She loves traveling, connecting with extended family. She has 6 godchildren, and of course, sorors and friends. Sarah Cook Holmes is a friend to many and a sister to all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Freeman, for that kind introduction. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And good evening, everyone. I want to say greetings to my brother in leadership, Grand Basilis Ricky Lewis, to all of my sisters of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, as well as the brothers of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and all who have joined for this webinar that we are hosting together as part of DST's Wellness Wednesday series. But we are, again, very happy that this is a special Wellness Wednesday that we are conducting in partnership with our brothers of Omega Psi Phi. During this biennium, our sorority has focused on wellness and mental health with a new initiative, Live Well. The Live Well initiative is focused on internal and external education awareness of the importance of mental health and wellness and issues that can impact our mental health. We want our members to live well, our family, our friends, and the community at large to live well. So we're educating ourselves, but also providing strategies that we may use in our daily lives that we share with others in the circle. Each month, there is a Wellness Wednesday session that's part of this initiative. And we discuss how we can live well, focusing not on only on physical health, but especially on mental health and wellness. These discussions are led by mental health professionals, and they focus on a variety of topics that you might not think are related to mental health, but really are, such as grief and loss. Certainly suicide prevention and awareness, postpartum depression, relationship violence, and just simply being able to live well and focus on proactively being mentally well. And so we're proud to co-host this program, Leading While Struggling, Navigating Your Mental Health and the Pressures of Leadership, along with the brothers of Omega Psi Phi. There have been a number of things that we have all dealt with over the past several years. We've lived through a global pandemic, and we're still experiencing an endemic. Many of us have suffered loss of some sort, whether it was the loss of income, whether it was the loss of our way of life, loss of a relationship, isolation, losses of loved ones. We in Delta began our last year with the passing of a sitting national president, Sarah Cheryl A. Hickman, and that certainly was an unprecedented event in the history of our sorority, and certainly a huge loss, and things like that really can affect our mental well-being. Our collegiate members, and I know that goes across the organizations, have faced a challenging number of years, coping through online classes, living at home, weekly testing, trying to manage chapter programming, all of this through virtual means, as well as all of the many other pressures that we face today, whether it's racial strife, increased violence, whether it's other health issues, economic impacts. So many things have increased symptoms of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. So knowing that we're living in unprecedented times, we really need to, not only during this mental health month, but all year round, really focusing on living well and focusing on our mental health and wellness. So as I close my greetings, I just want to say to each of you, especially I'm going to talk to women for a minute. As Black women, we often feel like we have a superwoman complex. And just know that it's okay not to be okay all of the time. It's okay not to be strong all the time. We don't feel like we can show vulnerability. And I know this goes for my brothers too, or let our guard down at any time. We sometimes suffer in silence and don't want others to know the emotional distress that we're feeling. So this focus on mental health has really enabled us to start having the conversations that we might not necessarily have, that we might not necessarily have felt comfortable to have, showing the vulnerabilities and really being able to make sure that our sisters and the community at large are getting the help that they need. Our national second vice president, Dee Dee James Kong, is also focusing on emotional intelligence and mental health and wellness. So this is something that we are doing across Delta Sigma Theta. And just know that we need to keep this focus on in our communities because we don't necessarily recognize it or necessarily do what we can do about it. So we will continue, and I know our brothers in Omega Psi Phi will do so as well with making sure that we continue to live well and continue to focus on the very important health and wellness. Thank you for joining us this evening. This will be an absolutely enlightening discussion. I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Freeman.
Okay, well, we certainly right now we're going to move to Dr. Brennan and the Grand Basilisk.
Thanks, Dr. Freeman. So indeed, it is a pleasure to be able to introduce our Grand Basilisk, Brother Ricky Lewis. Ricky Lawrence Lewis was born in Pensacola, Florida, and moved to Los Angeles when he was 13 years old. He was taught there in the Los Angeles Unified School District and is a graduate of the John Muir Junior High School, the Fremont High School, and the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California, where he was initiated into the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated by way of Nu Mu chapter in 1981. Brother Lewis has served on the board of directors of the Weingart Aquatic Center, YMCA in South Los Angeles, and served 4 consecutive years as chairman of the board. He is the executive director of the Omega Youth Leadership Conference and Mentorship Program in Los Angeles, where he has impacted the lives of over 8,800 young men over the last 28 years. He is the 24th 12th District Representative of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. He is the 11th Chairman of the Board of the Omega Life Membership Foundation and the 35th First Vice Grand Basilisk, and was thus elected as the 42nd Grand Basilisk in July of 2022 in Charlotte, North Carolina at our 83rd Grand Conclave. Brother Lewis has been employed in the aerospace industry for the past 39 years. He currently resides in Los Angeles with his wife, Vicki Lewis, and 2 sons, Brother Adisa Omari Lewis, who is a major in the U.S. Army and a master's graduate of Fraternity University, and Wyatt Lawrence Lewis, who is a 12 Drew High School, who will be attending UCLA in the fall of 2023. Again, it is a pleasure to pass it on for greetings to our Grand Basilisk.
How are you? For that introduction, certainly appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. To Madam President, Elsie Cook Holmes, it's good to be with you. I just spoke to you. To all the panelists, thank you. Doctor, thank you for being here. Thank you. on 4 continents. We're excited to be a part of this partnership tonight with the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. This topic on mental health is important for all of us, for our families, our brothers, our sisters, our moms, our dads, and our children, particularly in this space now with this social media. Children and just love to be on social media. That's all they want to be, is on social media. It's important for our communities, for mothers and fathers who lean on us, the men of Omega Psi Phi and the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta, for help. How do they handle these young men and these young women in their homes? So this is important for us. I just encourage everyone to listen in tonight. If you have any suggestions, share it with us. Be a part of this webinar. Help us be impactful as best we can. I encourage all of you to hydrate, read some affirmations on a daily basis, take a walk, read the Bible, read the Quran, read whatever religious periodical you like to read. Check on a neighbor, see how a neighbor is doing. Check on a soror if you haven't seen her in a while. Brother Grant Knox had a program called Brother You in My Mind for the fraternity. And Dr. Marion, when he became 41st Grand Boss of us, continued it on, and I'm continuing on as well, that we check on brothers of Omega Psi Phi we haven't seen in a while. So I just encourage you to check on a soror if you haven't seen in a while. Check on a brother if you haven't seen in a while. As Madam President said, we can't suffer alone. We have to let folks know how we feel. We are better together. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Brennan, thank you. Dr. Freeman, thank you. And Brother Brennan, I yield back to you.
Thank you, Brother Grant, and we appreciate your sentiments. We're going to move forward with our program, so I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Freeman so that we can move on to our next section of the program.
Thank you so much. We appreciate our leaders taking the time to recognize the importance of engaging, not just with our members, but engaging with the community, educating the community. And it's because of their leadership that we're able to bring great programming like this. And we're thankful that they allow myself and Dr. Brennan to serve in these capacities. So we are now ready, and we hope that you are ready for just an exciting time. Have you called someone? Have you told them to sign on to Facebook? Have you told them, okay, you don't have Facebook? Sign on to YouTube. We know they have YouTube. As you heard Grand Apostolist Lewis say, we want to make sure, and we want to remind you, we want you to engage with us. You may even see your comment show up on the screen. So we want to make sure that you are engaged and present and helping to move this conversation forward. Now we want to introduce our moderator, Dr. Cassandra Scales of the Federal City Alumni Chapter in the Eastern Region. She is a former National Second Vice President for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and a member of this dynamic, just over and above, over the top, excited committee of the Physical and Mental Health Committee. Dr. Scales.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sora Freeman. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our session, Leading While Struggling, Navigating Your Mental Health and the Pressures of Leadership. The title alone says that this is going to be a good conversation. As a former National Second Vice President and of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and serving on several national committees and boards within the sorority, and in my professional career as a physician and leader in my medical group, this topic hits home for me. It's one of those things where you hold the weight of the position and you serve as a beacon of strength and stability, but that can be a lot to manage. And often people see you first as the position that you hold, and second as the human that you are. Unfortunately, this can create an undue burden, and it's a very isolating environment as a leader, which can lead to, as Sora Cook-Holmes said, suffering in silence. This can also be a challenge of not knowing where to get support from, for fear of being stigmatized, or dare I say, seeming as weak. So how do you try to maintain the expectation of perfection that comes along with the position and the imperfect nature of who you are as a person, and ultimately leading as your whole and authentic self. That is what I hope that we get into tonight. So if y'all are ready, say ready in the chat, because I'm ready to get started. The goal of tonight's webinar is to leave you with perspective and insight, but most importantly, tangible tools and solutions. Now, if you're a leader listening to this call, I want to do something for you. My ask for you is that you give yourself permission to be human. Give yourself permission to be vulnerable and to reflect on the topics that we are going to be discussing today. We want you to have helpful strategies on how you remain the strong and confident leader that you were elected or appointed to be, while maintaining and supporting your mental health as a key component to your overall success and wellness. So let's get started. All right. So our first question of the evening is for our national officers. Given the plethora of tasks and constant interactions and travel with board members and your engagement with the community, how do you manage stress or practice self-care? And this one is for our national president, and then we'll follow with Grand Ambassador.
Okay, I must admit that I am not the best at it, but I certainly continue to try to get better to maintain stress, because it is extremely important in leadership when you're doing a very busy job, always on the road, all these various things. So I will have to say that I have some daily habits in terms of praying. And not only do I pray daily, but sometimes I feel like I pray on the run as well, because there are times you just have to say, Lord, please, as you're getting through. So certainly prayer, I have daily meditations that I do. And I try very hard to listen to my body, if you will, so that sometimes I can feel myself getting on edge. And so I know that that means it's time to take a pause. And I try to figure out how to do that. Or sometimes you get those physical ailments. You might get a little more stomach aches than normal, or headaches and things like that. And so I try to stay in tune with my body so I'll know. There have been a few times that I've, in addition to all the many Zoom calls, sometimes I do walking calls, just so that the days that I don't have time to do other exercise, that I'm able to stay active as well. And I try to stay in touch with family and friends. And I try to talk to someone, even if it's during meetings, that I can laugh with, because laughter, I think, is so good for the soul. And despite all of the great work that both of our organizations are doing, it is important for us to enjoy that work. And it's important for us to hopefully have fun while we're doing that work, in addition to the various pressures, that we face as we are leading. And each one of you on the call is leading from somewhere. But those are just a few of the things that I try to do. And the one thing that I know I need to do more of is get more rest. I'm still working on that one, so I'll continue to pray about that and getting more rest. But the other ones I definitely try to employ.
Awesome. So those are some really great tips. So Grand Ambassador Lewis, what you got?
Yeah, I can just start by saying, a man who finds a wife finds a good thing. Yeah, I don't know if I could do this thing without Vicki Lewis. I think Dr. Mary can bear witness. So Elsie can bear witness with her family. We can't do this without our wives and our husbands and our children, just to keep us balanced. My wife is really good for me, just to make me unwind and do what I'm supposed to do, because I can get tied up with the bros all day long. But a couple of things I do is I'm active in my community. I mentor young Black boys all the time. Active with the Embody program, ironically, with Delta Sigma Theta, with the Sisters of Central City Alumni chapter, as well as Compton alumni. So mentoring young Black boys are good for me in terms of my stress. Certainly enjoy working with the members of the Divine Nine on projects. The National Council of Negro Women project with Good Health Wins was good for me, just being able to, trying to get all of us through this COVID-19 piece. Personal care, I walk a lot, drink a lot of water, I read. I sit in the backyard a lot. While Vicki working in the backyard, I'm watching her work. I don't do the backyard stuff, that's her thing. And of course, spending time with my wife. We have a teenager, so that's, You know, that's stress in itself. We just went through the college preparation process, the college visits, trying to decide where he wants to go to college. I wanted him to go far away. His mama wanted him to stay close by. So he picked UCLA to appease his mama, but it's a great school. We're happy for that. I think Elsie said it most eloquently. I got laughter as well. Laughter is very therapeutic. I like to laugh a lot. The brothers will tell you I like to bust jokes, just to bring some laughter in the room. So that's all those things work for me. My wife, reading, walking, laughter, reading affirmations, reading the Bible. It's important that we do this because the sorors are demanding and the brothers are demanding as well. But as I was telling Elsie, we talked a little earlier before this. I just told us important that we just stay focused on taking care of ourselves because the sorority and the fraternity is demanding, but we love the work that we do, being able to serve at this level. So that's a couple of things that help me out in terms of dealing with stress. I yield back to you, Doctor. Is it Dr. Freeman I'm yelling back to?
Nope, that is Dr. Scales. It's all right.
Dr. Scales, I yield back to you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So I think those are some good tips, and I hope everybody is taking notes because we are definitely diving into a lot of tangible tools and solutions. So thank you so much, SOAR President and Grand Basilisk, for your input and insight. I really, really enjoyed you participating in this. Now, we are going to be turning over a conversation with two experts in the field, SOAR Freeman, and I should say Dr. Freeman and Dr. Marion. So this question is actually for both of you guys. Now, there may be people on this call or on this webinar who may be listening and saying that they're not struggling. There's nothing wrong with me. So what are some of the signs that people should look for to let them know that maybe they are struggling and that they need to seek help? We'll start with SOAR Freeman.
Okay. I really, I appreciate that question. I think sometimes we look at a situation and we say, I'm not struggling, but I'd like to ask us to consider that there are different levels of struggle, right? That everybody is not struggling at the same level. It could be that your struggle is that you lose keys. Your struggle could be that you forget tasks, that you find yourself having body aches and pains that there's no medical reason for. You're getting angry, you're lashing out at other people, you're highly irritable, and you're moody, so therefore it could be that those are issues and you wouldn't even know that those are actually signs that could indicate that you are struggling and that there is something going on with your mental health. The more severe, a lot of times you may hear depression, anxiety, but when you get on the place where you actually may find yourself hallucinating, hearing voices, or even thinking of harming yourself, or believing, and many times we may hear people say that, I just don't know if I ought to be here. So maybe it doesn't sound like a direct threat that I'm going to harm myself, but the mere fact that you would think that for some reason, life has you in a place that you don't want to be here, that's a sign. If you're smoking, you're drinking. Those are just some of the ways that we can use or think about signs that we may pass off every single day.
I think those are some good tips and just some good things about kind of knowing your body and listening to your body. And I think that's one of the things that Soror Holmes has said, when she feels it, then that's when she knows she needs to go to that place of relief. So Dr. Marion, do you have anything else to add to that? Because that was a great list.
Yeah, I think the list is very good. Certainly, there's no way to give an exhaustive list of the various signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety. But Dr. Freeman started us off well. I wanted to say a word about an honest self-assessment. And I think that's what a lot of people fail to do at times. They're just not really honest about what they're thinking and what they're feeling, or very honest about their behaviors. And I think it first starts off with, let me just truly and honestly look at me. We're a people that we have ancestors that endured a lot, persevered through a lot. And so the first thing, if anything happens to us, if our If our foot is hurting, okay, well, I'm gonna just keep on walking, it'll get better. And then next day it hurts a little bit more, I'm gonna keep on walking. And then one day you get up and you can't put any weight on it. That's when you begin to think, okay, I need to see about it, when you might need to have seen about it a lot earlier. And so with mental health, you begin to see signs and symptoms that initially we brushed off, but later on begin to cause serious dysfunction in our lives, cause problems with our ability to go to work, our ability just to parent and be a spouse, our ability to do many things that we are customarily used to doing. I have people who come to me for depression, and I ask them, what are some of the things that you love to do? And they might say, I love to go fishing. And then when you ask them, when was the last time you went fishing? It's been years, because a lot of the signs and symptoms are loss of pleasure in things that used to bring us joy, loss of interest in things that used to bring us joy. So I think to get to the symptoms, you have to practice that honest self-assessment.
I think that's a great point that you bring up. And I like the analogy that you used about the foot and being able to walk, because I think having physical symptoms, especially as a physician, right, that's easy to see. Is you have a wound, go ahead and treat it. But when we think about mental health, it's those invisible scars that's easy for us to kind of continue to look over until it becomes a major problem. So thank you for bringing that out. I'm going to take this next question to Dr. Freeman. Now, there are a lot of expectations placed on leaders who may be in high profile positions to be quote unquote on every moment as soon as you step outside the door. But sometimes you just don't feel like it and you would rather not engage with anybody. So my question is, how do you maintain healthy boundaries, and what strategies can you give to navigate the high profile nature of the position that you serve and access that the people feel like they have to you?
That's a really good question, because I think sometimes being in the positions that we are, we do feel like we have to be on, we have to show up for people. And that sometimes does not allow, if we even think about what Dr. Marion said, are we being honest? I think about being a licensed clinical psychologist, that my profession says that I have predetermined boundaries that I have in place. So then accepting the position of being chair of the Physical and Mental Health Committee, where I was opening up myself more access, people having more access, a greater number of people, over 300,000 people who, whether financial or otherwise, who may want to or seek you out or ask questions. So one of the things that I really think about when we say healthy boundaries, and I think sometimes people don't think of this, is the first healthy boundary is for you to consider the position that you're being asked to serve in, whether that's, being the head of the Girl Scout troop, whether it's working with the Boy Scouts, whether you're working with Girls and Boys Club. Consider the position, whether it's high profile or not, because it has an impact on your life. So thinking about how much will I have to give? How much access will I have to open up in order to be and to accept this position? And so that's part of that first boundary, is for you to consider that. Because sometimes we can find ourselves getting into leadership positions and they sound great. They seem to offer so many opportunities, but they also mean that there's going to have to be some sacrifices made along the way. And so making sure that you take stock first of those sacrifices that you may have to make, sacrifices of time, sacrifices of your energy, maybe even some of your treasure that you may have to think about, monies that you may have to expend in those positions. So setting a healthy boundary starts with you first. You are the healthy boundary. You have to determine what it is that you do for you and what is it that you're able to give and not give. Of course, then you also move to situations where you're making sure that you're communicating with other people about what you will do and what you're not able to do. Make sure that you're able to communicate that at the very beginning, because you've taken stock of what this position requires of you. So that means that when you've taken stock and you're able to have those honest conversations, then that means that I'm able to share my boundaries. And then also I ask that person, what are your boundaries? What are your expectations? So that I can respect their boundaries as well. We have to also make sure, I try to make sure that I set time in my schedule every day, different points of time where I'm checking emails, I'm communicating with others, so that I make sure that there's a balance between my work. I make sure that there's a balance between making sure that I'm fulfilling this position or in any other leadership role. And then I'm also making sure that I have time to socialize and be available to myself. Now, I will tell you, I have two self, care practices that I make sure that I try to do. One of which that helps with my boundary. One is that I make sure that if I'm able to ever take a couple hours in the morning, just where I can sleep in because I've had a really difficult week, I take those couple of hours. You have PTO time, you have time on your job, you have sick leave, you have vacation time. So I make sure that I take a couple of hours. And then I also commit to one Saturday a month. I know, one Saturday a month where I do what it is that Charlotte Freeman wants to do. I make sure, whether that's get a massage, or whether that is make sure I spend time with friends, so that I make sure that I'm staying connected, but I also make sure that that helps me to keep a boundary for myself. So a lot of times when you're in these high profile positions, it's unfortunately and unlikely that people will give you time. You have to take the time. You have to help them recognize what your boundaries are and then enforce them. Don't make them permeable. Make them where that person at the very beginning understood what you could give. And it's okay to want to give it and be excited about it, but make sure that you're taking care of yourself.
I think that's great. So I heard a lot of gems in that. And I think, it kind of boils down to prioritizing and planning. So you have to be able to plan what you want to do and how you want to do it, and understanding the risk and benefits of what those saying yes means to you as an individual, and inquiring prior to. So I think those are great tips. Now, my next question is for Dr. Freeman. Dr. Freeman, showing strength and confidence as a leader is most often an expectation of the office that you serve. Now, I said before, to be the beacon of light and hope for your membership. However, there are times when you are not strong, nor are you confident. My question is, how can a leader show their vulnerability to their members in a way that does not compromise their authority in their position?
Well, actually, I'd like to ask Dr. Marion to answer that question.
Oh, yeah, yes, it was for Dr. Marion.
Okay. I was still thinking about Dr. Freeman's comments about boundaries, and I'm just compelled to say that in our fraternity, we talk a lot about priorities, God, family, fraternity. And so I made certain that I tried to set the example of those words, because if you do it in that order, the boundaries naturally establish themselves. So brothers came to learn that I couldn't attend all events because I was coming to do the job that I had for that particular meeting, and I was trying to get home as soon as possible to family events. Because at the end of the day, I like what Grand Bosses Lewis talked about earlier. In order for us to be successful in these positions, we have to have the support of our families. They suffer the most throughout all of this, because these positions, and as leaders, we're going to be leaders in multiple organizations at the same time. And so what it does, it takes away our time from them. It takes away us from them. And so I was very sensitive to that. I see that a lot of times with Brother Lewis getting on the first thing smoking back home so that he can be with his family. And I would do the same thing, get back to the room to talk to them, and get back on the plane to get back to them. And so I think if you're honest and you deal with it in that way, brothers understand that you have those priorities. But I think also it was important to me to be human. And so I have been in the counseling field and have counseled folks 31 years. And so in sitting across the room from folks, you know, you talk to them a lot about being authentic, being genuine. You can't talk to other folks about that and you not be that yourself. And so brothers in Omega have seen me weep. You know, if the situation was one that moved me to such. I refuse to hide my humanity. And I would suggest to you that it is a misnomer to think that you can't be vulnerable and strong at the same time, that you can't be vulnerable and powerful at the same time, or confident at the same time. I just think that's a misnomer. I think you can do both. You want to be real with folks in all situations at all times, because I think brothers and sisters really look at that. That they know whether they can count on you and whether you're the real deal. And I'm pretty confident that that was what I did. So there was no I could weep by whatever came over me, but still not compromise my principles. And I think that was the other thing. They knew there was some principles that I would stand on and I would not move from. Now, I may not have reasons for everything that I did, but I was reasonable. So if you came to me with a better idea than I had, I'd yield. Because that's, to me, is how logic and how those sitting around the rooms really operates. But I think you can be who you are. And the men of Omega are very strong men, strong-willed men. We talk about iron sharpening iron. We talk about the field Negroes. I mean, these are some strong men that we have here, but they would accept you if you're real.
I think that's fair. I think, you know, as fluid human beings, it's not unreasonable to carry that into your position that you have, and understanding that and changing that mindset, particularly in our community, I think is something that I hope that people gather from this conversation that we're having today. So the next question is actually for the both of you, and we'll start with Dr. Freeman. Seeking mental health services can be a challenge for people in certain leadership roles. And there may be a concern about trusting that what you share in therapy can and will remain confidential. My question is, what advice would you give to leaders who may want to seek mental health services, but may feel like they can't because of the nature of their position? So, Freeman.
You know, that's a question that I think many people, whether in high profile positions or across the board, just worry about, if I seek services, what happens if my boss finds out? What if the members find out? What if family members find out? And, you know, one of the first things I would like to say is that in terms of you're actually going to see a therapist, a psychologist, a social worker, a licensed clinical social worker, or anyone in the mental health profession, that we are mandated by law. And, you know, so make sure that, and by our ethics, that we make sure that the information that you share in the session is confidential. It cannot be shared with anyone. And so we want you to know that, first of all, and we don't want you to shy away from seeking services for that reason. Now, here's one thing that I think that you may want to think about, but we can't stop people from seeing you coming into our office, right? We can't, you know, people see you and they say, oh, but most of us are in large buildings, you know, so therefore, when you come in, you know, they don't know where you're going. So again, don't allow that to stop you from seeking services. And then the final point that I would make is you can talk with your therapist if you really are concerned that you don't want to walk into an office and there's someone sitting there, or come out of the office and there's someone sitting there. You can talk to the therapist about arranging a time that allows you to be able to go into the office where it decreases the likelihood that anyone would see you. Your sessions are confidential, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you're concerned about coming, when I've seen high profile clients, I have set aside special time specifically for them that allow them to come and go with greater ease, because it adds to your anxiety if you believe that what your decision to actually step out and get services is going to be seen by others and a judgment made. And that's really what it is. A lot of times is once you finally made that step to go, sometimes there's concern about the judgment around it. And we as African Americans, we have got to kick that can over about actually the stigma of mental health and recognizing that your health for you and for your family is more important than what others may say. Because I'll tell you, many people are getting services. Now that they have learned since the pandemic has happened, people are seeking services. I can't tell you how many times I have been somewhere. And, as I said, a lot of times we had boundaries about we can't say anything, we don't speak to you unless you acknowledge us first. I have been in crowded spaces and I have had persons who will announce to the group, Dr. Freeman's my doctor. Dr. Freeman's my therapist. So I think that really many people are willing to say, not only have my life been changed as a result of getting services, but I want to tell others, and I want to make sure that I let others know that there is help. My life can change. So please do not allow that to keep you from seeking services.
I think that's great that you set up the scenario on how it can be set up for that. As Dr. Marion is coming up with his answer, I would like to encourage everyone that's in YouTube and Facebook to go ahead and start dropping your questions, because we're going to open it up for open Q&A after this. Dr. Marion.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I'm glad Dr. Freeman talked about confidentiality. I tell my folks that it's against the law for me to talk about what we talk about in session. That, and then they'll always say, well, I know you don't want to go to jail, and that kind of ends the discussion, right? I talk to children that I see about the limits of confidentiality, that if you talk about, I'm gonna kill myself or I'm gonna kill someone else, or then I have to break that by law. I'm a mandated reporter, so I have to tell someone about that. So I think you talk about clearly on the front end what's confidential and what's not, no matter what. And but with adults, it clearly is, we want them to know that what they say stays here. I don't know if I think that confidentiality is the reason that folks don't come. I think a bigger issue is what Dr. Freeman talked about, the stigma. The issue of if I go get help that suggests I'm weak in some way, that I was unable to fix this on my own. And so I think we have to get past the stigma. One of the reasons why I went into the field was the simple fact that if Black folks finally came to the counseling office, they would look across the desk and see someone that looked just like them. But I think what I try to do is remind people, slaves on the slave ship jumped into the ocean to die, to their death. Slaves on plantations hung themselves, stabbed themselves, drowned themselves, because they could no longer bear the unbearable burden of slavery, or watching how their children and wives and husbands were treated. They just couldn't take it anymore. But no one, as they committed suicide, no one considered them weak. No one had that thought of them. They understood that was simply unbearable. I remind people of the unpleasant feelings that are talked about in the Bible, where David said, my guilt has overwhelmed me. Elijah said, I've had enough, Lord. Jonah said, take away my life. Job said, why did I not perish at birth? Moses said, blot me out of the book you have written. Jeremiah said, cursed be the day I was born. And Jesus said, my soul is deeply grieved. The Bible is filled with stories of folks struggling with their feelings. So there is no shame if you're struggling with yours. There's absolutely no shame in going to get help. The shame is knowing that you need it and you're not going to get it.
That was powerful, about the shame of you not getting the help that you need. We do have some questions that have come in that I'd like to have our panelists to start to address. And the first question is, Oops, I have it, sorry. The first question is, what are some of the personal risk factors for mental issues that leaders can need to recognize? I think we kind of talked a little bit about this, and this can be for anyone. So for the interest of time, if maybe one person can answer.
I would say exhaustion. I think Madam President talked about that. I think, one of the things I still suffer with sitting in the chair, being the Grand Bosselist for 4 years, and prior to that, being the first Vice Grand Bosselist, is insomnia. And when I got out of the chair, I was amazed at how my blood pressure went down, how my sugar adjusted, how I lost 7 pounds right off the bat just by simply stepping out of the chair and giving all of that weight over to Brother Ricky Lewis, our Grand Bosselist. So my phone's not ringing and any of that. I'm at home most weekends. And so I think that, though there are some consequences that last a long time. I had great mentors before I went in the chair who told me, don't lose your wife over this. Don't lose your children over this. Don't lose your business. Have this balance. So I think, the importance of doing what I needed to do to navigate those waters to come out on the other side in the best shape that I know how.
Dr. Scales, I'd like to add to that too. I think one of the things when we think about other personal issues that come from is I would ask people to guard against in leadership roles, particularly the higher up you go in the leadership track, of being conscious of just your tendency sometimes to begin to believe that you know everything and you can do everything for everybody. That recognizing that you are in a place where you also, a lot of times in these leadership positions, you have people who are responding to you. They're saying yes to you. They're having to work with you. And sometimes we can get in a place where, for lack of a better term, we get a big head. And so we start not treating people as well as we should. We start believing that people should do things for us and be present for us. And, and we're violating their boundaries because we're in a certain position. So I would want us to make sure that we're guarding against that, that we remember that that in these positions as a leader, that we are called. There are many people who can serve sometimes. And so making sure that we recognize and continually respect the fact of the people that we work with, and that we make sure that we're still kind and we're loving and we're present for people in these leadership roles.
I think those are some great points. Now we have another question. Please keep the questions coming in because everybody's excited about this topic. This question is actually going to be for our national president and Grand Bosselist. Have you, as leadership, ever taken a mental health day? And how was this experience for you?
I'll defer to you. Maybe not. Okay, I'll start. Have I taken a mental health day? It has been a while, I must admit. It was probably, I'll be perfectly honest with you, it was back during my work life at PepsiCo. I have not done that, I don't think, since I was president. I don't think I've taken a full mental health day, or I didn't call it that. But the times that I have done that, I will say just being able to unplug for a little bit, whether it's reading a book, because I love to read, so I can just lose myself in the books, or don't really watch a lot of TV, but I think like everyone else, some of those shows that have come on, I have a tendency to binge watch. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think I did that back in December. It was kind of a physical timeout and a mental health timeout when I just binge watched Best Man. I know y'all can relate to that, the Best Man final chapter. And so just really being able to take some time. I have to admit, I had to get over feeling a little antsy about what else I should be doing. So that was the biggest challenge for me. But, once I got into it for a little while, I'm like, I could do this. I could do this. Don't do it too often, but I do think it's important to do.
Okay, Brother Lewis, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think Madam President said it all. This is Dr. Marion, this is a tough gig. I tell the brothers all the time, I read the fine print. You had to read the fine print for this job right here. But again, it's a job we love. It's a job that you have to. Dr. Marion said it eloquently. Family is important because they're in this thing with you. When you're in the car, they're in with you. You're listening, talking to your wife, and the phone ring, and it's a brother you pick up. You forget the conversation you had with her. So it's a balancing act. But many men have come before us in this fraternity. Many women have come before Madam President in the sorority. In tougher times than we have right now. We fly on planes now and get you back and forth. I don't know how they did this job without the internet or computer. I don't know how they did it back in the day. We talk about that all the time as well. But it's a balancing act. But again, it's when you see the sorority sisters you haven't seen in a while, when you travel and see the brothers you haven't seen in a while, it's refreshing. The fellowship is good. The friendship is good. And that's the thing that keep us going about how we do this job at this particular level. I yield back.
Great. I think it's finding those happy moments in life. So this one I think will be for Dr. Marion. I think this is a good one for us to discuss is how do you know what type of medical professionals to seek out if you've never had therapy before? Because there's all different types. So how do you know what you need?
Well, I think that what's important is to have an assessment done because not everyone who might see us actually receive services. I would also think the person asking that question wants me to talk about the difference from licensed practitioners versus non-licensed. And so in every state, they have licensed individuals, a licensed professional counselor, a licensed marriage and family therapist, or a licensed clinical social worker. You also have a licensed clinical psychologist and a psychiatrist. And so I have 4 nurse practitioners who work for me. And these nurse practitioners, typically when you send a person to them, psychiatric nurse practitioners, they're evaluating whether a person needs medication. All of my psychiatric nurse practitioners look like me, so we're not quick to give medication to folks. We ask that they work through their issues as much as possible with a psychologist or with one of those licensed practitioners. In my company, I'm licensed by the Department of Mental Health. I also have master's level practitioners, but they work under myself and my wife, Dr. Joyce Cole-Marion. So in that way, they're getting quality services. But I think you just can't go up to anybody because not everybody is bound to those rules of confidentiality that Dr. Freeman talked about. So you can go to somebody and tell all your business and they tell it to everybody else, or they can't really help you. So you come there and share all this stuff off your chest, and they might share some stuff off their chest because they're struggling too. So they really don't have a solution for you or give you some direction. So I would check out licensed facilities. There are inpatient facilities in every facility for those who might need to be hospitalized for short term. There are long-term treatment facilities. Those are the kinds of things I would look for and make certain you go into something that's appropriate.
I think that was a great tips. We have a couple of questions that have come in related to stigma. And so this question I will ask is, and I guess I'll ask this one for Dr. Freeman, how do we break the stigma about considering taking medications for potential mental health issues?
I think a lot of people, and you heard just Dr. Marion just talked about that, first sort of starting the assessment process. So I think it's the minute that we walk in the door, and when you think about taking medication, what I try to explain to clients is that a lot of times when you are having problems, and we've tried talk therapy, so psychology is talk therapy, psychiatry may have a combination of talk therapy, but primarily medication, that first, after we have tried talk therapy, we've tried strategies and treatment. And when we talk about medication, then we have to make sure that the practitioner that you're working with is explaining to you the reason that they believe that you need medication. Medication is not a bad thing. Sometimes it is that the problem is actually a chemical imbalance. And so because it is a chemical imbalance, that means that we may talk all day and you're in my office, because I'm a psychologist, and you're in my office and you'll say, yes, Dr. Freeman, I feel like I can, you just gave me some great tips. But 2 days later, the imbalance in your body is overwhelming the thought process. So therefore, when I think of, you think of your problems as you feel like you're underwater. The medication is not going to solve the problem. The medication is going to bring the symptoms down enough so that you can make use of the therapy, make use of the information that is being shared with you. So that way you're able to actually address the problem and hopefully help you to have all those God-given talents that have been bestowed upon you to come forward. So we want to encourage people to know that when you go to see the psychiatrist, you can tell them, hey, I'd like to start on the lowest dosage, and let's see how I do. And then we can move up. I think sometimes people say that if I'm taking medication, they're just trying to give me something. But you heard Dr. Marion say that when you go to someone who looks like you tell them, hey, I don't want medication first. I'd like us to try other avenues. But you have to be willing to trust your practitioner. That if your practitioner is someone that you trust and that you believe has your best interest at heart, has done the appropriate evaluation, that you've worked on these strategies, then you have to trust that your practitioner who you're working with, when they say, hey, we need to try medication, that you're willing to try it, that you're willing to do the regimen that they set up. But here's the other piece of it. If you decide it's not for you, talk to your doctors and let's try to figure out what else there can be done. But a lot of times I will tell you that when they say, we might need to consider medication, and you trust them and you've been working with them, they know what they're talking about. They have your best interests at heart. We're not pushing medication. We're not. We want you to have your God-given talents to come forward. But sometimes the imbalance that you're feeling is causing the challenge from you being your very best self.
I think that was a great summary about just being honest and doing that self-assessment, as Dr. Marion mentioned earlier. And Dr. Marion, we'll do 2 more questions and then we'll move to the next part of our program. But this question is for you. And the question is, how do you address mental health issues when they arise within your leadership team? So what kind of strategies would you give a leader to have that conversation?
Well, I think that in Omega, our motto is friendship is essential to the soul. And so if I truly, let's put the leadership piece aside for a minute. If I'm truly your friend, I should be able to come to you and tell you that you're drinking too much, that this is the behavior that I'm seeing. These are the symptoms that I'm noticing. And we have a great program that Brother Grand Bosselus Lewis was really a part of the startup. We all traveled to DC for Brother You're on My Mind. And this whole program was about bringing mental health resources to our brothers. If you go on our website right now, there's a Brother You On My Mind link, and you can see all kinds of resources, crisis hotline numbers, on and on and on that brothers can call, family members can utilize. And the whole purpose of that was to make brothers aware of the resources nationally, but in their own communities that they can go get help. But also it meant that we were taking on the responsibility as a friend to be able to say, this is what I'm seeing, and I'm willing to accompany you to that particular appointment, to that particular assessment, because I love you. You're my brother, you're my friend. And so it's, again, going back to being honest with folks. Now, folks are grown. So I'm very respectful of me being able to tell someone, say, hey, from my expertise, I think you're kind of struggling with this. And they say, ain't nothing wrong with me. And I feel like I've done my duty, as a professional and as your brother and friend. But I also know that's going to run its course. Well, hopefully, by God's grace, we meet again before something tragic happens. But I think you just are courageous enough and loving enough to go to your brother, go to your friend, go to your sorority sister and say, this is what I'm seeing. I love you, and I want to try to help you.
It's that whole feeling about I am my brother or my sister's keeper, and having that active listening mode of being present, intentional about being honest with them. Last question, and Dr. Marion, you kind of touched on what Omega Psi Phi is doing. So this question is going to be for Dr. Freeman, is what steps do you take to promote a healthy work culture in your respective organizations? This is a nice tee up for our next segment. So.
We have to first start with the leaders, right? We have to start with those who are given charge, of working in small segments of our sororities and our fraternities, so if the leaders are healthy, they practice healthy boundaries. If they are present for the members when they're going through different challenges, rather than just brushing it to the side and saying, well, we still got this work to do. But if they will take the time to say, okay, not necessarily in front of everyone, but, pick up the phone, we text a lot, but when people are going through things and you can see it, let's pick up the phone, because there's nothing that conveys your love, your care, your sentiment, even if sometimes, we say, well, I'm not exactly sure what to say. Sometimes just the fact that you called is enough for that person to know that you took the time to call. So when our leaders make sure that they are recognizing that we are giving, that we want to be present to create this space for members to be authentic. I go back to that statement about healthy boundaries, because when I practice healthy boundaries as a leader, then that means I show up better for the people who I'm connecting with. That means I'm more willing to be there and be present. So I would encourage our leaders to make sure that they're taking that step back. If you are a leader, and you find yourself and you say, oh, wait, that might be me, that I'm not necessarily, I'm more focused on the work than I am on making sure that people feel comfortable enough to come to us and share what the concerns are, then that means we're very closed. We're not open. We're not saying it's okay for you to tell me about mental health issues. And that's what we're doing. When we do our Live Well programming, we are meeting once a month. And there are some times where as it is right now, where there's a webinar series, but there are many times that after we've discussed the issue, then we move into breakout groups. Why? Because we want to be present for our members. And so we want to encourage everyone to create a space where people feel comfortable. And if it's not you, because we do have to recognize that sometimes our bandwidth is that's not our forte, then making sure that you're placing someone near you who you can direct them to so that they can get the support that they need. I know we have it in us. We would not have come into these organizations if we did not want to be a part of something great. We talk about the brotherhood, we talk about the sisterhood. It's time for us to show up in that space in our full glory to make sure that we all feel connected, because one of the things that really stands in our way is when we're not connected. We've got to be aware of ourselves. We got to make sure that we're setting those boundaries, but more importantly, we got to be connected.
Yeah, I think that's so perfect to say, that it starts from the top. And I am so grateful for our leadership as well as the leadership of Omega Psi Phi to have this moment where we can have these honest conversations, because it really does set the precedence of what normalizes mental health and what normalizes the things that we used to not talk about before. So thank you all for your participation on this panel. I hope that everybody took some good notes, but we're not done yet. I am going to be introducing Sora Kayla Bell, who is from the Central Region and a member of the Des Moines Alumni Chapter in Iowa. She is a member of our fantastic National Physical and Mental Health Subcommittee. And Sora Bell will be giving you an update on our Live Well initiatives, as well as our charitable partnership with NAMI. I bring to you Sora Bell.
Yes, thank you so much, Sora Scales. In my occupation as a licensed mental health counselor and the director of a university college counseling center, it has been an honor and my privilege to serve on the Delta Sigma Theta National Physical and Mental Health Subcommittee. I am honored to talk a little bit more about the Live Well initiative. Like President Cook-Holmes mentioned earlier, the Live Well initiative is an internal and an external education awareness movement. Moreover, we want communities just like you, to reside and serve to become more engaged in the Live Well initiative. Thus far, we have already had over 9,000 participants. That are those that have tuned in on the days that we do Wellness Wednesdays, or those that have watched the recordings of our Live Well program. The Live Well initiative has several components. From you can have Jesus and a therapist, because you can't have both, to domestic violence, and to belonging in our sisterhood. We have had a variety of moments where we're able to cultivate community and have critical conversations related to mental health and wellness, specifically in the Black community. Chapters are implementing the Live Well moments in your meetings and using the 7 modules that have been created and developed by the National Physical and Mental Health Subcommittees in order that chapters are able to deliver that program to our communities. Yes, we are not only having that program just within Delta Sigma Theta, we are going and we are giving back, which is a duty within our dedication. Some of you have had specific questions related to mental health and mental illness. And if you are interested in learning more, I invite you to join our Wellness Wednesdays. They have been the second Wednesday of the month. However, if you would like to learn more, follow us on social media. And SOARs, please look at our national communications that are sent about Wellness Wednesdays. We have conducted Wellness Wednesday webinars specifically for collegiates and have highlighted a charitable partner during each Wellness Wednesday. Tonight, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, we will share information about our partnership with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, otherwise known as NAMI. And I'll just wait for that slide. Thank you. So May is a very special month. As a clinician, I love May because it is Mental Health Awareness Month. Very powerful. And Delta Sigma Theta has had a variety of upcoming events and continuing events, which you're able to review on the slide thus far. I do want to note that the testimonials that were dated from May 17th have been extended to May 20th. So if you haven't had the opportunity, I highly recommend that you send them out, and you should have received an email on Monday of this week from the National Program and Planning Committee. Next slide. Let's talk a little bit more about NAMI. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is also referred to as NAMI, is the largest grassroots organization focused on improving the lives of individuals that experience mental illnesses. NAMI has a variety of programs to support those who are diagnosed with a mental illness, but also programming for family and friends who are providing for those that are impacted by a mental illness. NAMI Walks is a specific program that's organized by various NAMI affiliate chapters wherein communities come together for a walk about a specific concern impacting mental illness. such as suicide, depression, bipolar, and more. Mental Illness Week, Awareness Week, is the first full week of October, and NAMI supports each day of the week by uplifting the voices of individuals with lived experiences and working to educate the public on mental illness. You all have heard us multiple times today mention how our community's voices need to be heard. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to get connected. Now we're going to focus on some ways that you can also support the initiatives of NAMI and enhance education around mental illness. This can be done through their Sharing Hope program. The Sharing Hope initiative will be one of Delta's primary focuses during year one of our NAMI partnership. Sharing Hope is a program dedicated to holding healing circles for Black African immigrants about and by Black immigrants. You can host a community conversation by viewing the Sharing Hope video, which is embedded on their website, within a group. You can then use that video to create a discussion about the warning signs and symptoms of mental illness. And then you can also partner with a mental health professional to discuss appropriate services and long-term wellness plans. We know our communities need this. You may also utilize the Sharing Hope program to help us better support our communities in receiving necessary mental health resources, which we don't often have access to. In addition to Sharing Hope, you can collaborate and build a relationship with NAMI in other ways. For example, NAMI hosts an annual national and state conference/convention. You can attend this, or you might also be able to sponsor the event. This can be a great way to help your chapters to enhance their understanding of mental health and mental illness. You may also host a workshop on a variety of mental health topics, such as the ones that we talked about today. And you can request a speaker or additional resources for your workshop from NAMI. We are aware that every chapter and community does not have a mental health professional accessible. That is the beauty in this partnership with NAMI. You may also collaborate with NAMI to host the National Ending the Silence program, which focuses on reducing the stigma of mental illness while also helping people to access hope. There are a variety of ways that you can coordinate and collaborate with NAMI. To learn more about their organization and the national and local services that are available and ways to become more involved, I invite you to visit NAMI.org. And when you go to their website, at the bottom, you will find how to access the affiliate chapters that are local to you. Dr. Brennan will now discuss the Brother on My Mind initiative.
Good evening again. Thank you. We definitely appreciate the synergy that we see between our organizations around mental health. Specifically on this initiative for Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, our initiative is referred to as Brother on My Mind, and Brother Dr. Marion, who spearheaded the launch of this while he was our first Vice Grand Basileus, and then carried it even further during his term as Grand Basileus, is an initiative that we've put in place that allows us to look introspectively first, for us to see that we noticed within both in our leadership, but also within our general membership, that we had issues around mental health, and we wanted to figure out how do we first address those issues in-house. We want to be well enough and safe enough to be able to help those who are in our communities. That's what our organizations are here for, to help uplift our communities. But if we're not well enough to do so, then we're not going to be able to successfully take those initiatives into our communities. So as we notice these issues inward, we were able to partner with the National Institute on Minority Health and Health Disparities, and we were able to have them participate with us in building a toolkit for our membership, for us to be able to use those tools. There's no expectation that all of us are going to turn into all of a sudden being mental health professionals. That's not exactly the push of the program. What we really wanted to do was put together a toolkit of materials around the issues around depression and stress and anxiety, and we wanted it to be science-based. So we wanted to use the professionals out there that have the ability to put this information together at the highest level, at the National Institutes of Health level. And what they were able to do is really build that toolkit in collaboration with us so that we were then able to take it on and educate Omega's members. We were able to take it to our families, our communities, and really help to highlight the issues around depression and stress and anxiety. And we wanted to be able to communicate the importance of seeking help for those mental health problems, and really encouraging people to obtain appropriate treatment. So within the toolkit, if you go to the website, you're able to click on the link on oppf.org. There's a link for Brother on My Mind. And when you click on it, the resources that are available, on a national level and at community level are there. And what we are asking is if people, through the training that takes place and the continuous activities that we have through this initiative, if you're able to recognize, whether in a leadership role, whether it's in the brotherhood, whether it's in your family or community, you notice that there are people who are exhibiting signs that have a potential to be related to mental illness, then you have resources to give them so that they can then take their issues and turn it to the professionals who may be able to help them to navigate those issues. And so that's where we really wanted it to go. And so in our past, you'll notice that we were able to take this into both our communities, but we were able to look most importantly internally and do some of these activities. We were able to, at our chapter, district, and international levels, to have forums, to have discussions, to have tabletop discussions. And we were able to use the toolkit to get people some of that information. Our initial collaboration a few years ago with Delta Sigma Theta was around mental health and mental illness during the pandemic. And we were really able to help bring some of those issues out and then refer people to the toolkit at that time as well. It's been highlighted in other areas, whether in magazines and national publications. So it's really, as we get into almost 10 years of having the program around, it really has permeated into those other communities. But we don't want to rest on those laurels. So we continue to push this at every level of our organization. And so you'll see as we move forward, you'll see that this remains current as well. So at our national meetings, at our International Undergraduate Summit this past January, we had specific time where our undergraduates are able to focus on the issue of, recognizing their own mental issues, those in their families, and getting a new familiarity, especially those who had not necessarily been exposed to this in their past. They were able to get a new familiarity with the toolkit and some of those tools to be able to help themselves, but then to use those tools to help others. But we take it out through all sorts of activities at the chapter level, the district level, and at the international level. So we will continue to make sure that, we reduce the stigma around mental illness. We will continue to reduce the stigma around seeking assistance. We want to let people know that it is indeed okay to not be okay, but it is not okay to know that you're not well and then not seek the help that is required. So we want to make sure that we continue to highlight those issues that have come out as a part of this discussion today. But again, remember, it does not end here. Those questions that you have, those issues that you have, please continue to share them with us, and we will continue to help to get you pointed in the direction of getting care that is required for you, for your families, for your communities. Thank you, and I'll pass it back over and yielding my time.
Well, what a wonderful night we have had. What a wonderful collaboration this has been. We hoped that it would be amazing. It was fabulous. We just want you to know it was fabulous. We thank Omega Psi Phi for their dedication and commitment to working with us. And we hope that you have truly enjoyed this program tonight, hearing from our national leaders, hearing from practitioners. I know that you have been so excited. Our moderators kept us going, kept us moving. We just, hearing about both of our programs. So that's the wonderful thing about Wellness Wednesdays and when we're collaborating with our partners, because it really gives us a chance to showcase and let you know that we're not stepping only. We're not just, spending times in our own pods. We really are committed and dedicated to our community, and our leaders are behind us, and ensuring that we are bringing quality programming for our participants, for our community. So we thank you so much for coming tonight. We will be back for Wellness Wednesday on next month. And next month, we will be talking about mental health in young children. I know, can you believe that a child under 5 could have a mental health disorder? Right. So we are wanting to make sure that, again, the whole idea of identifying signs and making sure that we start off at the very beginning, getting our children on the right track and getting them early intervention resources when necessary. So we thank you again for tonight. Dr. Brennan, any closing comments?
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. I just want to say it indeed was an amazing time. We appreciated the opportunity to collaborate in this activity. I want to say a special thank you to our leadership, at the highest levels, to your national president, and to our Grand Boss list and our immediate past Grand Boss list. We truly want to say thank you for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedules to address this from a personal perspective about how being in the positions of leadership does affect one's mental health, and then to also give us tools as to how to do so. So I just want to say thank you for all that you have brought to the organization and continue to bring on a daily basis. Sora Freeman, thank you so much for allowing us to continue this type of collaboration, and hopefully as we grow and grow through the growing pains, we'll be able to do even more as we move forward.
Well, we certainly thank our audience, for being here with us, every single one engaging. We hope our members from both organizations have been able to engage you, to give you tidbits of information if your question was not answered on the live broadcast. Yes, we both had members of our organizations in the chat, chatting with you, providing answers. So we want to make sure that you feel seen, you feel heard, and you feel loved. Thank you for being with us. Have a wonderful night.